Okay, do we have sound? I hope we have sound. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear it, but not loud enough.
Okay.
We're gonna just crank it up.
All right, we're going to work on the sound.
Good idea.
Thanks to you, and thank you to your daughter, because I know she's been helpful in this process as well. She's probably
She
helping
better,
most of
she better be. She's my daughter.
us. Okay, my volume is all the way up, so we're just waiting to get the volume so that everybody can hear you. I wonder, I don't know, would the mic be helpful? Okay, he's working
We'll
on
give him a
it.
minute, it's okay.
Picking up from your laptop.
Oh,
So I'm gonna do this for just a second. Let's minimize this for a second for me, please.
exit full screen.
And then let's go to your sound settings on the computer.
Okay. And do you know where that is? This my sound settings?
It'll be outside of Chrome. Can we minimize Chrome? It'll be
Isn't it nice to have a man around the house?
so
Oh,
it's
well,
gonna
that sounded,
that was better.
yeah. Keep talking. Let's see.
Isn't it nice to have a man around the house? Can you hear me say that?
It's gonna be under settings right here. That little gear. Yep.
Okay.
Is he a handsome man and how old is he? Because if he's 88, send him to me now.
Oh, that's Apple IDs.
Let's have wake up. Let's do this. Get this done.
I don't know any of this.
I don't know it either because I'm.
Good for you. Neither do I.
Oh. What about the mic?
I mean, I can bring the mic over here and just put it next to this.
Okay, let's just try that. Okay. Well, while we're waiting for the mic, I just want to start by thanking you for being here today with us. Lots of people, almost everybody, I think everybody in this room knows who you are, and we just appreciate your work and what you have done over the years. So thank you.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't waste my time. You people have done more in a lifetime than I will ever do. You have to realize that. Don't ever praise a pale-faced woman for doing what she should have been doing, what we should all be doing. Don't thank me. Don't thank me for that. I thank you for the patience you've shown in putting up with the stuff that pale women have done to women of color for the last 400 years in this country. You don't have to thank me. You have to hope that I stay alive long enough to shut this business down. And I intend to. That's a threat. That's a threat.
Well, everybody, JaneElliot.com has a lot of learning materials and resources that you can learn from and also share. So this is primarily a women of African descent, Black women, African women. We're from all over, and we're here today for a wellness conference, as you know. And so part of holistic health is your environment. And we know that the environment that we were born into has its own set of toxins, depending on which continent you hail from to be here today. And so for us who who grew up, have lived in the US, we know exactly what those toxins are. We know what that consists of. And I invited you here today because you have a very unique way of talking about what is happening in this country and around the world, and what we can do to contribute to the change to make our environment healthier. So I guess as a first question for you, and then we can get a couple questions from the audience as well. What can we do to make our environment here in the US less toxic?
Number one, teach the truth. Start teaching the truth. Stop teaching that Columbus discovered America. People from Africa came to this continent between 20,000 and 10,000 years before Columbus was a gleam in his father's eye. You must get to the schools and say, look, people, we don't care what evangelical people say you should teach in the schools. We want you to teach the truth. We want to, if we're going to have Black History Month, we're going to start studying Black history 10,000 years ago instead of starting in 1619 when the first, what we call Black people, were brought here as slaves. The first Black people who weren't Black, number one, you're not Black. You're shades of brown, and I'm not white. You can see the color of my shirt, and you can see the color of my hair, and you can see the color of my skin. And this is not white. Get over it. That white and Black came as a result of the Spanish Inquisition when a man named Torquemada went around the country killing people because he thought they couldn't be Christians. He realized eventually that he had killed a bunch of Christians, and then he knew you couldn't tell what a person's religion was by looking at him. So then he had to decide how they could decide whether one deserved to die or not, and they set upon skin color. They call lighter colored people white because white is the color of goodness and purity. They call darker skinned people Black because Black is the color of savagery and evil. Now, by the gods of war, I am not good and pure because of the color of my skin, and you are not savage and evil because of the color of your skin. But as long as those are the two terms that we use, we will be separated by a chasm of ignorance. And it's time for us to stop using white and Black and start using words that tell us how much melanin there is in our skin, because that's why your skin has its color. If you only have a little melanin, you are melanemic. If you only have a little iron in your blood, you're anemic. So if you only have a little melanin in your skin, you must be melanemic. If you have more melanin in your skin, you're melanaceous, which rhymes with gracious and spacious, and it's a good thing. If you're melanotic, you have a lot of melanin in your skin. Your skin is almost brown to almost the point of being Black. Look up melanotic in the dictionary, and that's what it says. It doesn't say you're Black, it says you're very dark brown. But if we call you Black, and some teacher says on the first day of school to the little Black, so-called Black kid that comes in the room, oh, another little Black boy, she has automatically in her head given him and her the idea that he's savage and evil. Do not allow that to happen to your children. Now, I know that Black is the term that we use now because people of darker skin have gotten used to it and have claimed it as their own. Why in the world would you allow yourselves to be called a color that means savage and evil when you are none of those three? You're not savage and evil, and you're not Black. Now, if everybody in the room is angry at me, I don't care. You have to know that too. I'm going to be 89 years old at the end of this month. I'm ready to, somebody's going to kill me. And I know that. I get threatened with death threats all the time. All the time, people are threatening to kill me. And I say, bring it on, fool. Because you need to realize that if you kill me because of what I say to decrease the level of racism in this country, you might make a martyr out of me. And then you might have to spend the rest of your lives celebrating Jane Elliot Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that? You don't want to do that? And I don't want you to do that. That's not what I want. I want to live long enough to see people of color who were here first recognized as being the people who were here first. The only reason my skin is this light is because some person from Africa, my ancient ancestors, left the area of the equator and moved without benefit of any modern technology to populate every landmass on the face of the earth. And as they moved farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. Their brains didn't get smaller, and their brains didn't get larger. Their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. The only reason I have this skin color is because my ancient ancestors moved from Africa into the area that is now called Ireland. So let's get over this idea. If I trace my DNA back far enough, I'm going to find that a percentage of it came from a country in Africa. And that is true for every human being on the face of the earth. Get over the idea of several different races. There's only one. We are all Homo sapiens. And if you don't believe me, get this book. I just happen to have this here, The Myth of Race. Now, the man who wrote this wanted to call it The Lie of Race, but he knew nobody'd read it and nobody would publish it. So he called it The Myth of Race. Listen to the last sentence.
Can you hold that up again?
It's up forever.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
You've got to read this book, just this last sentence. Homo sapien is one race. It is only by recognizing this fact and understanding its history that we might one day have a society in which all people are treated with dignity, equality, and kindness, regardless of their ethnicity or culture or the color of their skin. I am sick and tired of people of color blaming white people's attitude toward them on your race. Your race isn't the problem. White ignorance is your problem. When white people stop being ignorant, then skin color will no longer be a problem. Now, that's going to happen in about 30 years, because you need to know that within 30 years, white people, what we call white people, who don't really exist, melanemic people, will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. Within 30 years, women of color, melanaceous and melanotic women, are going to be running this show. And if you don't think that could happen, get the tapes and watch those fool, white, tall, male Republicans. They aren't Republicans anymore. Donald Trump knocked the L out of the word Republican because his only interest is in the pubic area. So now they are Republicans. Now, get that tape of those foolish, white, so-called white males interviewing and questioning that one black woman who is now a member of the Supreme Court. Did you watch that? Did you watch that questioning?
Yeah. Many people did.
Did you ever hear such ignorance before in your life? I have never heard such blatant, racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic ignorance in my life. I thought we were done with that. But now it has gotten worse since Dinosaurus T. Trump came to power. And now those of you who are saying she shouldn't talk about that way about somebody who was once the president of the United States. He was never the president of the United States. He was somebody who lived in the White House when he didn't have anything else to do. He was never and should never have been in the White House unless he came in as a janitor. But he wouldn't have been good at that either because he doesn't have any skills in that area either. People, we have got to realize that there's only one race, and we've got to go back to when Barack Obama got elected. I thought things are getting better. I can quit talking about this because it's getting better. I didn't realize that those fools would go underground and work so hard to keep Barack Obama from being successful. I watched that happen, and you need to know. And you have a question? Because if you don't have a question, I'm going to go on saying things that you are not going to like at all. Okay?
Well, we are here to hear what you have to share. But I do have a question. But since I have spent some time talking with you, I actually would like to see if anyone in the audience has a question before I go in on mine. Yes, come over. Yeah, just come over. Come over. Yeah.
My name is,
There's good.
Michelle, and I am one of your students. Not from 1960 when you began, but you came out here to Colorado, and our corporation had you come out. And I was in the brown eye, blue eye. I'm brown eye, by the way.
Wait. Did you work for what, US West? Or US West?
Yes, actually, you and I had lunch a couple of times together because you totally mesmerized me to see this woman from Iowa. I don't even know if you're 5 feet tall. I'm 6 feet.
Yes, I know you are.
But I just wanted to say, first of all, I know you said don't say thank you, but I am going to say thank you, and I mean it, because you opened up a lot for me. But what I would like to ask you is your suggestion or your view on how we can get our people to understand what you are saying in this generation now. Because this is, I mean, what you're saying is truth. I've been around for a while. A lot of people have been. But I mean, I have a granddaughter and I want her to grow up, and she will, with what you're saying. But the generations need to know. I mean, it's something that needs to be known by everyone, not just, that group of people like us right
So
now.
how do we get our
So
children?
how do we get our children and some of our adults, but our children to get where you're, what you're teaching?
Number one, teach them the truth. Teach them the truth. Teach them at least these three things. Number one, without what we call blacks, there would be no whites. You have to realize that if every one of us traced our DNA back as far as we could, we would find that a percentage of our DNA came from a country in Africa. The reason I do the things I do, the reason I say the things I say, the reason I know the things I do is because the part of my DNA that came from Africa comes out of my mouth every time I open my mouth. It's unavoidable. I identify with the other, and in this country, the other is people of color. I identify with the other because I am one of those. I am, whether you want to admit it or not, I'm your 30th to 50th cousin, because we all have the same ancestor back there 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, however long it was. I don't remember that far back. I don't remember what I did this morning. You need to know that there comes a time when you can't remember anything, but this I remember. If we would teach the truth in school, if we just teach these three truths, number one, without blacks, there would be no whites. Without melanemic people, without melanaceous and melanotic people, there would be no melanemic people. We are all descendants of people from Africa. Number two, without the Jewish faith, there would be no Christianity and no Islam. The first 5 books in the Old Testament came out of the Torah. Did you know that?
Yes.
And if you didn't know that, by the gods of war, you should have known that. Without the Jewish faith, there would be no Christians and no Islam, no Muslims. Number 3, without women, there would be no men. And not until some man can carry a living being in his body for 9 months, and then when it's got the head the size of an orange and weighs about 6 pounds, push it out of his body through a hole the size of a green pea. Until a man can do that, he had better not tell me what I can do with my body, nor any other woman. I will not be told what I can do with my body by a man who could not possibly do what I did 4 times in 5 years. Now, I finally found out what was causing that, so I didn't do it anymore. But actually, I enjoyed what was causing that, and I would have done another. Well, as I said, send me that man. My husband died 9 years ago. I wore him out. Now, you need to realize that I can do things that no man has ever done. Get that into your heads. Women can do things that no man will ever be able to do, unless we are going to talk about trans. And trans people will be able to do it, but not until one has a baby. Am I going to allow any man other than the doctor to tell me what to do with my body? Furthermore, you need to realize that abortion in this country, over 30% of the abortions in this country are natural. The body has gotten rid of at least 30% of the children that might have been born. Has nothing to do with somebody saying, I don't want this baby. Those things happen. Now, what that tells me is God took care of those children. Stop complaining about some other woman having an abortion. She knows what she has to do. She knows what she will be responsible for doing. And not until we start teaching the 3 R's of rights, respect, and responsibility in the schools will we get rid of things like racism, sexism, ageism, homophobia, and all the rest of the isms. But if we could get rid of racism and sexism and anti-Semitism, then we'd have more time to work on ageism, wouldn't we? Mm-hmm. This whole business is a matter of self-imposed ignorance. The information is out there. All you have to do is go after it. But right now we're in trouble because the evangelical Christians and the Republicans are trying to tell us what we are going to be allowed to teach in the schools. All this started, that kind of nonsense started when Dwight Eisenhower allowed a group of Roman Catholics, members of a Roman Catholic group, to get the words under God inserted into the pledge. Now think about this. The pledge says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This group of people said, we want under God in the pledge. So they put it just before the word indivisible. Under God, indivisible. They automatically separated us into people who believe in God and those who don't. But no, we can't be that. We are indivisible. That is an oxymoronic statement. I didn't say moronic, I said oxymoronic. Two things put together that make a statement that doesn't make any sense. Either we all believe in God and we take out the words indivisible, or we are allowed to believe as we choose and leave the word indivisible in there and take out the words under God. Here's something else we need to get rid of. The words under God, in God we trust, do not belong on our money. We are supposed to have separation of church and state in this country. We need to get the words in God we trust off our money. If we're going to leave it there, underneath it we have to put all others pay cash.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
One thing that's happening right now, directly related to women's health, is these are two initiatives that are happening in different parts of the world. So in Africa, there are many nations that have started to promote. They've started to promote and publicize. Oh my gosh, I've lost my train of thought. Contraceptives. So they're promoting actually contraceptives. On this side of the water, we know, because we've listened to the news, we kind of know what's going on politically in terms of women's health care.
Wait. Let's not call that the news. Let's call that the bads. Okay?
Okay, there you go.
All right, go on.
We have this whole debate over women's health care, and people, half of the country is pushing for a ban on contraceptives altogether.
Do you know why? Do you know why?
And so,
Wait a
yeah, I
minute.
want you to speak to that. Why would we have in one part of the world, the government suddenly wanting people to have contraception options, and then on this side of the water, people are pushing very hard not to have those options for women?
There's a perfectly simple reason for our telling people, women, that they can't use contraceptives in the United States of America. And I told you this before. White people, so-called white people, are losing their numerical majority in this country. So with the help of the evangelical Christians, they elected Donald Trump, who said, we're going to put a stop to this. We're going to build a wall on the southern border of the United States so that those brown-skinned people can't come in here because, and he said this, these are his words, brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. Evidently, he had read Ben Wattenberg's book, which is called The Birth Dearth, and I read that book that he wrote in 1987. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish author and statesman, and he was a member of the Enterprise Institute, which is and was an extremely conservative Republican group. And he wrote this book, and I read the book. In fact, I bought 3 copies of it. After I read the first page, I was so angry that I had 3 copies. I had them on my shelf. And whenever anybody came to my house, I said, look at this paper. Just look at this first page. The first paragraph of that book says, the main problem confronting the United States today is there are not enough white babies being born in this country. If we do not do something, this was in the book, but if we do not do something about this and do it quickly, this will no longer be a white man's land. I was absolutely, how could anybody write? And so I read the rest of it. He said, there are 3 things we can do to prevent this happening. He said, we will be a numerical minority if we don't do something and do it quickly. The next paragraph says, there are 3 things we can do to remedy this situation. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine. Unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all kinds not to have babies. We don't want to do that. We don't want to increase the numbers of those people of color. The second thing we could do is remember that 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Now think about that. The reason, and somebody must have told Donosaurus T. Rump about that, because I'm sure he didn't read it. but somebody told him about it, and he took that to heart, and that's the reason he closed the Planned Parenthood clinics, because he thought that the only thing that happened in those Planned Parenthood clinics was abortion. He didn't know what he was talking about then. He doesn't know now. But if you can get enough people to go along with something that's totally idiotic, particularly if you can appeal to white males like those in the 3.5 percenters, or the Oath Keepers, or the KKK, or the Proud Boys, if you can get your hands into their minds, or any other part of them, then you can direct how they feel and what they say and what they're going to do. And that's exactly what he has done. Now, how does he know how to do that? I'll tell you how, because in his bedside table, in a locked drawer, he has a copy of the book, The New World Order, which contains the writing of Adolf Hitler. When he came to power, I immediately thought, my God, this is Hitlerian. This man sounds like Hitler. Then I thought I was exaggerating. I was jumping to conclusions. Then I read the book, and everybody should get this book and read it. When at times the mob is swayed. That's the name of the book. When at times the mob is swayed. Write it down, somebody, and get that book. And if you just read the first 2 chapters, that's all you need to know. We are in a situation right now where women are in trouble, because you're going to be if you're white, if you're a pale face, if you're melanemic, you are going to be expected to do exactly what women in Germany were expected to do during the Holocaust. Christian women, blue-eyed, pale-faced women, were expected to have 6 or 7 babies, and they were impregnated deliberately by the Nazi Party so that they would produce more pale-faced children. We are headed in that direction right now. You need to realize that, and the way to prevent it. How many of you have voted this year? How many of you have voted in this election? And if no hands have gone up, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, because you don't care. If you haven't voted and you don't plan on voting, you don't care what happens. The only way we can change this is to do what women did in 2020, in that last election. You came out in droves and you defeated Donald Trump. You can do it again. Women have the power to put a stop to this. If you don't put a stop to it now, you're going to lose your freedom. You're going to lose your democracy. Make no mistake about this. You will be even less safe as a woman of color going into the delivery room than you are today.
Yeah. And actually in the building where we're having this conference and these workshops, they have rooms where, people can come in and vote early this weekend. So
yes,
yeah.
Everybody do it. But don't you dare vote for the Republicans, because they do not have your best interests as women at heart. They want to use you to decrease the number of children of color and increase the number of white children. Make no mistake about that. This is about racism.
Say a little bit more about that, because I think people, we get persuaded by different things that we hear in the media. And as you know, they talk about this particular issue in terms of your religion, in terms of, your faith, and they try to dissuade you to do one thing or another based on that, when really there's very much another agenda at work. So
absolutely, what they are doing is absolutely unchristlike. But what they are doing is, wait a minute, thou shalt judge not that ye be not judged. They are judging every woman as being either fit to reproduce or unfit to reproduce, either fit to make a good living or unfit to make a good living, either have a job outside the home or stay at home and raise babies to increase the number of white children in this country. People, you have to realize what's being done to you, because hey, I don't have to worry about it. I hope. I'm not going to have any more children, but the world is glad for that. I have grandchildren and I have great-grandchildren, and I want them to live in a country in which people are recognized as valuable human beings just by virtue of the fact that they are human beings. I believe my sweatshirt, which says, God created one race, the human race. Human beings created racism. People, anything you create, you can destroy. We could destroy racism in 2 generations if we decided to. That's what educators ought to do. I'm not a teacher, I'm an educator. The word educator, and if you listen to me on all these things I say on television, I say the same things all the time. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. And you can't do that if you're teaching that Columbus discovered America. People who looked like you were here when Columbus got here. He thought he had reached the Indies, so he called them Indians. They weren't Indians, they were Africans. We all came from the same place. If you haven't, did I bring it? If you haven't seen the not Reader's Digest. Oh dear, did I? Okay. There's a magazine that everybody has to see. It's the
with the
National
map.
National Geographic magazine for April of 2018. Get the net. Well, here it is right underneath. I knew I had it. Get this magazine. See this? See these two girls on the cover of this magazine? Those girls are twin girls. Twin girls. Their father is black, what we call black, and their mother is what we call white. Get that magazine and read it and show it to your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren so that they will know how absolutely brilliant their ancestors were. We have lied consistently for the 300 and some years that this country has been a country. We've been lying about the people who were here first, that your kids have the right to know the truth. And if you don't show any other book to them, get Anthony Browder's book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Oh my God. Did you realize that 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, people in the Nile Valley, which is a river in Africa, in Egypt, were doing cataract surgery with metal instruments 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ? You didn't realize that because it didn't happen after 1619. People, think about what happened long before 1619, long before you people were brought here as slaves. The first people we called Indians did not come up out of the ground. They came from Africa. We've got to teach the truth. Did I answer your question at all?
You did
Sorry
that.
about that.
No, you did that and then some. Did that and then some. Is there a question on this side? Come on up. Okay.
My name is Trinisha. You can call me Tree. I've been fascinated with you from 12 years ago. I sat at a conference and learned about, I looked at that film, you in your classroom, and you did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed with the kids. And I'm from a little small town in South Louisiana called Thibodaux, Louisiana. Ooh, I emailed every professor back at my little school and all my friends and families. And let me tell you about this white woman. And thank God, and this is what she did with our kids. And she done made a living of it. When I had my own child, I told her about you too. Now, my question now is, the Christian Bible says a prophet has no honor in his own home. What about you and yours? You've been preaching unholy truth, contentious gospel to the world. And a good bit of us have read it and we believe in it and we walk with you and walk with that. But what about in your own home? What about your babies, your children and them great grandbabies and family members?
My children and grandchildren and great grandchildren have decided that maybe I'm not so dumb after all. but they grew up, as they grew older, they grew up. My siblings and my mother finally kicked me out of the family after my dad died. They couldn't do it while my dad was living because he wouldn't allow it. But after my dad died, my mother called and said, don't come over here anymore. Nobody's comfortable when you're around. You ruined our reputation with that eye color thing. We don't want to have you around anymore. So I didn't see my relatives until after my husband died. And then they all came to the funeral and said how sorry they were. And I looked at them and thought, yeah, you're a bunch of sorry people. There's no doubt about that. But I miss them occasionally, but not a whole lot. I am not welcome in the town in which my great grandfather was one of the first settlers, because I said openly, you don't have to be white to be right. And in fact, students, none of you are white. You're all shades of brown because you all came from the same place. That did not set well with the people in the community, except for the administrators. The principal and the superintendent, every year they had the opportunity to fire me, and every year somebody was elected to the school board who said, let's fire Elliot. And every year that person came to the school board meeting, and the superintendent would have to teach them what their job was. And he said, you weren't elected to hire and fire teachers. That's my job. And I'm not firing Mrs. Elliott because she knows what she's doing. If I hadn't had good superintendents and good principals, and the last one wasn't all that great, but I was going to leave anyway, so I didn't care. But I cared about what happened to the kid, but I didn't care about what he thought of me. I never had a problem with the superintendent and the principal, none of them ever. And I had 3 different superintendents and at least three different principals. None of them ever came to me and said, don't do that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Because after the first one, those administrators knew that my students were learning something that was going to help them in the future. They were smart enough to know that in the future, pale faces are going to become a numerical minority in this country. And they had better get accustomed to seeing people of color in positions of importance and of power, because that's who are going to be there. You women of color, you melanaceous and melanotic women are going to be the ones who are running the show in the future. You need to realize that. And you also need to realize, and this is what I've told my kids, as a result of that, my grandson is married to a beautiful, beautiful melanaceous woman, absolutely gorgeous. And my granddaughter has adopted an absolutely fabulous little half Hispanic boy. My kids, and my daughter was married to a Saudi Arabian. So there's an Anglo crossed with a Saudi Arabian. We took my granddaughter, that couple's granddaughter, to my father and put her into his arms. And he looked at this little child and he said, that's the most beautiful child I've ever seen. And then he looked at my Saudi Arabian son-in-law and my Anglo-American daughter and said, that's a good cross. My father was a farmer. He raised cattle and hogs and sheep, and he knew a good cross when he saw one. And he looked at those 2 young people and said, that's a good cross. Now you need to know that in the future, if we want our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren to live, pale faces are going to have to reproduce with people of color. Because as the hole in the ozone layer has gotten larger, but now it's getting smaller, but that hole in the ozone layer allows a whole lot of sunlight to enter our environment. And it is killing pale faces on a daily basis. So if we want our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to survive in the future, pale faces are going to start pursuing people of color. Get used to it. You are going to be the most valuable people on earth, particularly you women, because you are the ones who are going to save this civilization because of the melanin in your skin. That is a tremendous, tremendous advantage for the future. We have decided, in the past, we decided it was a disadvantage because we can't get there. We white folks can't get brown unless we go out in the sun, and then it fades in the wintertime, so we can't keep it unless we lie under a sun lamp and then get melanoma because we don't have enough melanin in our skin to protect ourselves from the damaging rays of that sunlight. So if the white race wants to have children in the future that will survive, they're going to have to go to people of color to get that job done. That's the way it is. And you can be angry about it, and you can say, I don't want any sons or daughters-in-law that look like that. Well, if you want grandchildren to stay alive, white folks are going to have to get used to it. And believe me when I tell you, they are going to enjoy every minute of it.
Well,
Thank you.
yes, thank
Did I
you.
answer your question? What was the question?
I think you did answer the question. You did answer the question. I just have one more thing. This is something that you had mentioned that caught my attention. Many of us have mates. Many of us have mates that are men, and you.
Yeah. You have my sympathy. Well, actually, you're very, very lucky. Take care of them because they are the weaker sex.
Well, this is actually what I wanted to talk to you about because you had some really interesting thoughts and facts about this. And so we should take care of them. You know, we are their most of the time we're the caregivers of our families, but there's something special and unique about our husbands, our male mates. So I wanted you to speak a little about that.
Most of you women will live the last 20 to 30 years of your life without male companionship. That's the way it is, because they are the weaker sex, and they do die young, and most of you will be without them. I used to say that and chuckle a bit. It's not funny. My husband died 9 years ago. My oldest son died 3 years ago. I miss them horribly. Sometimes I wanted to kill him, but I didn't want him to die. And you have to realize that we have lied about this situation all our lives. We have called women the weaker sex to keep us in our place. And now we are realizing that we need to get out of our place. We need to take on the reins of running this situation, because those men aren't going to be around to do it. They're going to die young, and you're going to be left to run the situation with men who aren't able to do it. Imagine if you can, what would have happened if Donald Trump had gotten reelected. Think of how terrifying that is. And think of how terrifying it is today that might happen again in 2 years. Men are extremely valuable. I enjoy them immensely, but it takes women to make the wheels go round. It takes women to reproduce. It takes women, the kinds of knowledge and information and spirit that women have is not found in men of any kind. It isn't there. Now, I know that gays and lesbians, that's a different thing, but still, lesbians are stronger than gays every day of the week, because they have to be. Because they have to act a certain way in order to be accepted even by women, straight women. So they are in a double jeopardy. And that same thing is true for gay males. People, you have to start seeing people as they are and accepting them as they are and appreciating them and taking care of them so that they will always be there for you. Mm-hmm. I depend on women of color to fix this thing in the next 2 years. This year, this day after tomorrow, on Tuesday, in 4 days, I hope to God that women of color go out and vote in huge numbers so that we can stop the downward trend of this country. We are on the verge of losing our democracy because of a man who does not appreciate women, and because of women. I'm sorry, but because of evangelical women who do not appreciate what they are. They really think that we should go back to the 50s. Ronald Reagan said, I'm going to take you back to the 50s. The 50s were great for white males. They weren't worth a damn for the rest of us. I was angry when he said we're going to go back to the 50s. No, I don't want to go back to the 50s. And I certainly don't want to go back to the 1800s. And neither, I think, do you. And the only way you can stop that is by going to the polls and saying, no, we are not going to elect Republicans. We need Democrats, period. Some of you are thinking, why is she talking about politics when we're talking about women? You cannot talk about women and race without talking about politics, because the three are so intertwined. You can't do it because of politics. Things are happening in this country that would never have happened. The wall on the southern border of this country should never have happened. Make no mistake about that. Closing Planned Parenthood clinics should never have happened. Make no mistake about that. No man has the right to tell you what you can do with your body, period, unless you're trying to take his money, and then that's a different thing.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess I just have one more thing as we wrap up here. You provide an incredible amount of information, and so I do want to tell everyone that we have on janeelliott.com, she has a section for learning materials, and she has a whole host of questions and answers and book references that you can go to. So speaking of those learning materials, this is what I want to leave with. All of us in this room, we live in this country, and so we have people in our circles who are not melanated. That's a reality. That's a reality. We have friends and people who are even close to us, maybe even our partners who are not melanated. So I want to know from you, what would you suggest? What do we say to them about what we heard from you today? What should be our message to them about you and what you have said today at this conference to our non-melanated folks?
Well, tell them you like them anyway.
Absolutely.
And when you're telling them these things, do with them what they have done with you and say, I'm telling you these things because I love you. Now, how many of you have had somebody do something really ugly and say to you, I have to do this because I love you? Tell them to put their love where the sun doesn't shine. Tell them we're going to start a new relationship and a new community. And in this community, you are going to be guaranteed either love or justice. If I guarantee you love, you might not get justice. If I guarantee you justice, you might not get love. Now, let's see a show of hands. You look and see a show of hands. How many of you would vote to be guaranteed love? Even if you didn't get justice? That one. Yeah. Now, how many of you would vote to be given justice, to be guaranteed justice? Because you see, well, you see, if I say I love you and I don't trust you justly, if I don't give you justice, you are going to end up loving me, and I'm not going to end up loving you. But if I promise you justice and I treat you justly, we may end up having a loving society. We will not have a loving society until we have a just one. The world has to recognize justice. And in order to do that, you have to go to the teachers of your children and say to those teachers, from now on, instead of teaching the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and only one of those words begins with R, reading begins with R, writing begins with W, and arithmetic begins with A, so it's time to stop referring to those 3 R's. Say to them, and when my child is in your classroom, I expect my child to learn the 3 R's of rights, respect, and responsibility. And I expect you to expect every student to respect the rights of every other student and to be held responsible if they fail to do it. That's what we should be teaching in the schools. We should be teaching the 3 R's of rights, respect, and responsibility, and every person on that campus deserves to have their rights respected and to know that teachers will be held responsible for respecting the rights of everyone. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's not hard. You go to the principal now, because school just started. You go to the principal and you say, here it is. I want this. And here's another thing you do. You get a copy of this map. See this map? Can you see this?
Move it over. Okay. Move it over to there.
Okay, got it? This is the Peters projection map. See little Greenland up here at the top of this map, this teeny tiny little thing right there? That's really the size of Greenland, people. On the ordinary map, the map that you've been seeing all your lives, Greenland looks like this. See Greenland? It's a lie. It's a lie, people. The man who made the Mercator map, Mr. Mercator, was commissioned by the Pope to make a map that showed the spread of Christianity. So on that map, instead of the equator dividing the map into 2 equal portions, 2/3 of the map takes up the northern hemisphere and 1/3 takes up the southern hemisphere on that map. People, think about that. That was a Christian behavior. A map that shows the spread of Christianity. So on that map, Greenland is bigger than South America. People, that's the map that's in your children's classroom. Unless you are going to school in Boston. In Boston, all the children have the Mercator map in their classroom. People, you can get this map from ODT.com, ODT.com. It's the Peters World Map. Get it and take it to school and say to the teachers, I want this map hung in the classroom so that my child can see the world as it really is. And get a globe, people, that doesn't have any color on it. Oh, I didn't even think about this until last week. Oh my God. I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson on television, and he said, get a globe that doesn't have the colors of the countries on it. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Yeah, the globe, the real globe, just has water and land and clouds. It doesn't have all those different colors of the countries. Kids never see the globe as it really is. We need to have globes in every classroom that shows this is what the world looks like, people. It isn't green and yellow and orange and black and brown. It is the color of water and the color of the land. What a revolutionary thought. We could change the way kids see their world if we let them see their world as it is, not as some politician wants them to see it. Okay?
Hey,
Get this map. Get this map. This is an assignment. And go to that website and download those printed learning materials. The first one is a set of typical statements that white folks make that think they aren't racist. Oh my God.
I
You
was
read
just
through
going to ask you about that. So please talk about that, because we work with white people. We work with, we're friends with, we're all part of
I
each
know.
other's world. And so I did want you to talk about that as it relates to your learning materials.
I don't have it with me, but I'm going to tell you what it is. It is the first is a set of commitments it's a set of typical statements that white folks make. Like, when I see you, I don't see you black. Have you had that said to you recently? I'll never forget the day a white, so silly little woman with heels this high, blonde-haired, blue-eyed fool, diddled up, and diddle means walked with short, quick steps, up to Linda Guillory, tall, black Linda Guillory. And she said to Linda Guillory, Linda, I've known you so long, I don't see you black anymore. And I thought, oh, Lord, there's going to be bloodshed here. I've got to get back because I got to wear this suit tomorrow. So I backed up, and Linda Guillory looked down at this fool and said, I think you have a serious eye problem. Let's make an appointment with the optometrist so that we can get your eyes fixed. That woman diddled away from her faster than she had diddled up to her, and I'll bet she never made that statement again as long as she lived. I said to Linda, that was brilliant. She said, what did you expect me to say? I said, well, I know that you told me what I was doing wrong when we had our first meeting, you and I and another person, and I said, your skin color doesn't bother me. And you two, the two of you said, doesn't bother us either. And I said, oh God, I've done it, haven't I? And they said, yeah, you've done it, Jane, but we're going to teach you. And they commenced to teach me. And the typical statements on that paper, you ought to go through them and read the first one, and then go to how that is perceived, how it is perceived by the one who hears it. That you have those responses in your head so that the next time somebody says to you, you're real smart for a black person, you can say, let me tell you about that. And then you pull that idea out of your head and give it to them. You have to have responses to those really ridiculous statements. The third page is a set of commitments to combat racism. Go through those, check yes, those that you have done, check no, those that you haven't done, then go back, circle one that you check no, and do it for a month. Put the date beside the one you chose and do that for a month. And at the end of the month, take that paper out and write some notes to yourself about what you learned by doing that. White people aren't the only racist people. We have all taught everybody how to be racist. And if you want to succeed as a person of color, as a melanaceous or melanotic person of color in this country, you have to know how to act white. You know it, and I know it, and it's too damn bad, because what we ought to be learning is how to act human.
Yeah.
And the first humans happen to be other than what we call white. Read those, and then go to the bibliography. Read everything under race. You will learn from those things that will absolutely guarantee you, when you repeat them to your child and teach them to your child, that no teacher will ever, ever dare stand up in front of a group of students the first day of school and say, when I see people, I don't see people as black or brown or red or yellow. I just see people as people. Because your child is going to raise his or her hand and say, do you see white? You forgot to put that in there. Don't you see white folks? And then that child is going to get kicked out of school for the day at least. But at least that parent is going to be stopped. That teacher is going to be stopped in her tracks. And that's what we have to do. We have to stop this racism being camouflaged in the school. If you don't see people as black, you don't see people. And when you can say to a person, when I see you, I don't see you're black, what you're saying is, I have the kind of mind that is able to wipe out the largest organ on your body.
Mm-hmm.
Skin. That is the largest organ inch by inch on your body. So when somebody says, when I see you, I don't see you black, they are saying to you that they are willing to wipe out a huge amount of what you are and who you are. You don't have to put up with that. And if you do put up with it, and you do it, and it happens in the presence of your children, then your children learn that that's the way to respond, to take it and smile. No, no, do not take it and smile. Somebody has said the only thing necessary for the perpetuation of evil is for good people to do nothing.
That's
And
right.
as long as we women do nothing and just say, yes, boss, and go along, then that's how long this will last. You've got to say, no, it's not going to happen in my presence. And so nobody speaks to me because they know, they absolutely know that they're going to say something racist. And I'm not just going to smile and say, well, you should know better, but I'll accept it. I'm going to say, what the hell's the matter with you? Do you realize what you just said? Let me give you a list of books to read. In fact, I'll hand you, I bought this book. I'll hand you Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny. Have you read Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny? It's about this thick, just a little teeny tiny book. Just read the chapter titles, and then you'll know why you have to read Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny. Read it, for heaven's sake, people, get that and read it. So when somebody makes one of these ridiculous remarks, you can say, let me give you this book. Now, I can either hit you across the head with it, or I can put it in your hand and hope that you'll put it into your head on the way home. There's going to be a test. I'm going to ask you the next time I see you what you thought of chapter 6. Now, they'll never speak to you. They'll never speak to you again. You need to know that. But at least you will have made a dent in their ignorance. And that's what we have to do, is make a dent in their ignorance.
Okay.
Quick question. When she was talking about those pages, that's on the ODT.com site. The reader, that's what she was talking about?
I think you're referencing the book materials that are on your website. Is that right? JaneElliot.com?
Yes.
They're on her website, JaneElliot.com, under learning materials.
All right.
Yeah, so we gotta rip the Band-Aid off and not be
Yes, you
about those responses.
And don't put it back on. Don't put it back on. And when you have wounded someone because of what they've said, do not feel sorry for them. Say to yourself, what I just did was absolutely necessary. That's going to be a better person for the rest of his or her life because I refuse to let them act like a fool in my presence. This is not a bad thing to do. When you go to the doctor, you get a shot for all this stuff that's going on. You don't apologize for your children. You say, look, this is going to keep you alive. That's what you have to do with racism. You have to give them a shot, an injection of refusal to go along. I will not go along. Well, you won't have any friends, but at least you'll be more comfortable.
Okay, sure. One last question, and then we're gonna let you go. Come over. Well, it's being recorded.
Okay.
I can repeat it if you want to
Sure.
say it.
It's really just about any thoughts on intros, conversations, or statements that could be made for a Black mother going into the hospital who's concerned, about her well-being and her health.
So the question was, are there any comments or statements that you can make to a Black mother that's going into the hospital and has concerns for her health? Did I get that right? Okay.
Is this about a Black person who's going in for a gynecological exam?
A Black woman.
Yes.
A Black woman, very specifically Black women, gynecologically, or like.
Yes, for Black women going in for gynecology, birth, any sort of women's health issue.
Number one, choose your doctor very carefully. And if you're going to have a baby, get a midwife. Find a midwife of color so that you don't have to worry about it. I spoke to a group of midwives in Los Angeles several years ago, and I said to them, why would you ask me to speak to you? I'm not a physician. I have no medical training at all. They said, because and a number of them were women of color. A lot of us are women of color, and we want to be sure that when people who are our friends go into labor, they're going to be treated fairly in the act of delivery. I said, are you telling me that you are suspicious, that you think you won't be treated fairly? And they all said, we have all been treated unfairly. Every person, woman of color in there said, we have all been treated unfairly in the delivery room. So if I were you, I would find some women who want to be midwives, and I would help them to become midwives, and would make their services available for women who are going into delivery. because you have the right to be there in a safe, secure situation. That doesn't always happen for melanaceous and melanotic women in hospitals in the United States of America. You know it, and I know it. So the first thing you have to do is find a doctor that understands what's going on and that will not go along to get along where racism is concerned. And the hospital is one of the most racist places you can go into because they have been educated to believe in the rightness of whiteness. You know it, and I know it, and we can pretend it isn't true. And some of you are saying, oh, that's not the way my doctor feels. I'm sure there may be some doctors who don't feel that way. I will never forget, oh, good God, the doctor who delivered me was, when I was born, and forgot to sign the paper, said I never had a birth certificate. Anyway, I had to go to him. He was still in the same town. I had to go to him for a gynecological exam one day, and I was about 45, and he was doing his thing, and he said, well, if you were a man, and I reared up, I said, don't say to me if I were a man. If I were a man, you'd tell me what the problem is, and you would solve it. But now, because I am a woman, it's because of my age. Do not tell me this has become of my age. And I'm leaning forward, and he's where he needed to be. And he looked up and he said, well, Jane, I don't believe I'll take your blood pressure right now. I said, that's a good idea. Because I was absolutely furious. How dare he indicate to me that, well, at my age, Jane, I said, if I were a man, you wouldn't say at my age, Jane, to me. At your age, Jane, to me. You wouldn't do it. And he wouldn't have. And he never said that to me again. I kept right on going to him because he had delivered me when I was delivered. A poor man. Anyway, and he's gone too. So he didn't live as long as he should have.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Any other last minute before we wrap up? Okay. Okay, we have one more. Go ahead.
Get beyond the use of that N-word.
Okay. Oh, that's a big question. Well, we're looking for your thoughts on how do we get past the N-word? What is your perspective on that?
Let me put it this way. You know who Abraham Lincoln was?
Yeah.
You know who our first black president was?
Abraham
Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was our first black president. He was a Melungeon. He was part white, part black, and part Cherokee Indian. Now you get a picture of Abraham Lincoln in your head and see if you can see the black of him and the Native American of him and a little bit of white that's left. In Kentucky, where he lived, he was called the N-word because that was the word they used to describe people who were of varying degrees of color. It wasn't a bad word until we changed it into a bad word. One of the major differences between pale faces and melanaceous and melanatic people in the world is when pale faces come into a new environment, they immediately adjust the environment to fit their needs. When people of color come into a new environment, they immediately adjust their needs to fit the environment.
That's right.
Oh yeah, and that's the reason that people from Africa lived on this continent 10,000 years before pale faces got here, and the continent was in pretty good shape. But then, because they lived according to their needs, they changed their needs to fit the environment. We pale faces came, and we turned this into a garbage dump. And that's what we have been engaged in doing for the last how many years? There are rivers now on this country that you do not dare drink out of because of what we have dumped in them. We changed the environment to fit our needs. People of color changed their needs to fit the environment. The N-word wasn't a swear word until we made it into one. Oh, I will never forget. Oh, no, you don't have time to hear all this, but I remember the day Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And I remember, what's his name, saying to 3 leaders of the black community, Walter Cronkite, interviewing them the night after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, and saying to them, when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? And I thought, my God, what has he said?
Wow.
When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. See how civilized we are? Who's going to keep your people in line? Now, at that point, up to that point, I thought that those were my people. I had no idea that we weren't all the same thing. We were all the same human beings. So I changed the channel. And there was Dan Rather saying to two leaders, black males, don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger that you can at this killing? And I thought, sweet Jesus, how could anyone not be angry at hearing about the killing of another human being? And at that point, I threw the teepee that I was ironing into the closet, and I decided that the next morning I was going to do the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise with my children so that no child of ever any age coming out of my classroom would ever be ignorant enough to say that. Said stupid, but you can't fix stupid. You can fix ignorant, and you fix it with education. You fix it by leading people out of ignorance. Nobody did that for Walter Cronkite, and nobody did it for Dan Rather, and they still haven't done it for Dan Rather. And it's still all right for him to be an arrogant, because of the color of his skin, he has the right to be ignorant.
Okay, wow. Well, I don't even know what to say. I'm always feeling in gratitude for the messages that you have and the resources that you provide.
Wait. You need to realize that these messages aren't original with me.
But it's
them from people of color. No, I learned them from people of color. And the only way you can get this information is to read books written by people of color who know what they're talking about. It is, and they do know. I don't know. If you read, oh good Lord, if you read Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, get Neil deGrasse Tyson's book. And what's the name of it? Starring Messenger. Get that book. Get Neil deGrasse Tyson's book. It just came out. I read it. It is full of gems, except that one thing. There's one thing he says in there, and I underlined it, and then I put wrong on it because he says in there, women have breasts, men don't. He's an astro. Yeah, that's what it says in the book. And I underlined. I thought, well, Neil, baby, you know a lot, astronomy and physics, but you really think you don't have any breasts? You got another thing coming.
Yeah, exactly.
So read the rest of the book. It is absolutely priceless. It is full of really good information. For instance, that young black women don't have acne the way we young white women do. And white women get lots and lots of problems with head lice. But that isn't the same for black women because they can't stay on the strands of hair of black women the way they can on the hair of a white woman. Did you know that? I tell you, this thing is full of simple little things like that we have just assumed this is what's true. And then you read this book and you think, oh, good Lord, why didn't I know that? Get the book. I can't remember the name. Oh, wait. Oh, what a surprise.
Messenger. Okay.
Starry Messenger.
Cosmic
Tyson. Starry Messenger. Oh, people, get this book and read it. If you aren't going to read the whole thing, let's just read the pages I have. Oh, Lord. The Great Tragedy of Science, the slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact. The slaying of the idea that where there are 4 or 5 different races. The fact is that there's only one. We are going to destroy members of, and if you haven't read, what's his name, Reich's book, The Business Roundtable, The System. If you haven't read The System by Robert Reich, get it and read it, The System. It's about the Business Roundtable and the people who are running this country in order to make money and who are continuing to perpetuate the myth of white superiority by the way they behave in the Business Roundtable. You've got to get the system, people, so that you understand the system. But the first thing you have to do Tuesday morning is go and vote if you haven't done it yet.
That's right. Go and vote this weekend because we got early voting all over in Colorado, or at least by Tuesday. Jane Elliott, everybody. Okay, thank you so much for sharing and being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It only took an hour and a half. That's good.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thanks a lot. I'm going now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye now.
Okay.
I can still hear you. Turn off your, turn it off. Somebody's gonna say something they shouldn't.